Alright, it is Monday, 9:02 a.m. and yeah, September 20th. So, not necessarily the best time for overall markets historically. And let me see if I can switch to the other screen if I can do this right. Yeah, so here's the thing with SPY, and if I were to do this, it could probably extend maybe several years, but I just have a very basic trend line, and this trend line helps me just get an overall idea of what the overall markets might be doing. It's done this a lot of times where it has like a dip here and a dip here, and it just kind of holds this overall trend line level. It's not exact, it's not right at the levels or something like that. It's just it's a trend line, it's a general guideline, and that's actually kind of shocking to see this thing is having a pretty significant drop in that. At least it cracked the trend line here. We do have like a big volume day on Friday, and it's not looking good pre-market. Now, could it regain itself by the end of the day? Of course, it's done that so many times, but that means it is going to probably affect the OTC markets, and that is kind of impressive to see a drop like that now in the 430. So I'm just probably going to keep in mind that the overall markets are exactly where they are right now. They're not looking so good, so maybe that is going to potentially affect OTC markets. It could totally affect the way some of these that are trying to do a multi-day breakout are going to play. In fact, I think, well, it's not much, but some of them, they are down a little, but OTCs don't necessarily trade that well or trade that much pre-market, although they can. It doesn't really happen all that often, at least compared to listed stocks, which can be trading with decent amount of volume since early in the morning. And yeah, so it's just going to be something to look at, to take into consideration. ISWH could be a morning panic bounce play, although ideally, and that might be asking for too much, it has 3 green days from this breakout level, 1 and then 2 today and then another one, but it's still a nice one that's up, from the 72-cent level. Just looking at a small daily chart, obviously it's been lower, but this could be a morning panic bounce play, especially ILUS. This is the main one, and I actually don't mind trading a larger size on this one. My only fear is that this thing can have a morning panic bounce play, but it can be one of those tsunami type stocks where it just has this humongous volume price action and just constant just fading like DPLS. I don't know if it'll work. Maybe I'll have it. Doesn't really. Let's see if I have any that's called tsunami, but I'd have to go back and find some. But like DPLS on SAV, they have these crazy morning panics, and they just keep breaking and making like 3 lows on the day, just constantly breaking a day low, and those are pretty nasty to look at. So I will consider ILUS if it does like a morning panic bounce play, and I might consider size because I really like morning panic bounce plays. But if it breaks the low, I'll probably just sit back and let it do its thing, and even if I miss the bottom, I just don't want to get wrecked trading those tsunami type panic stocks. TGGI, this one might be interesting. Maybe I missed the breakout here and give or take 86, but maybe it does an official breakout and it also becomes a penny stock, no more sub penny, and that could be pretty impressive too for a setup. I might consider something like that. Yeah, that's really where I'm at. Just morning panic bounce plays, really, with all of them except for TGGI. These are a bit more sketchy because it's a sub penny, but it does have a lot of support at least, and it could definitely continue to run for several days. I'll be looking at more stocks, more potential setups, but that's what I have for right now. Oh, and I need to complete my thoughts. If the overall markets are just looking absolutely horrible and it just keeps downtrending and it affects these OTCs, there's always that chance that maybe what is a morning panic bounce play is just something that is continuously fading, dropping, just side by side with the overall markets. I do need to take that into consideration. I don't want to have that issue where I'm in a morning panic bounce play and I keep trying and trying again, for example, and it's just because the overall markets are not doing very nicely. I need to think about that too. That's one thing I'm going to consider as well. Alright, it is 9:36 a.m. and I did have a trade with TGGI. This was a morning panic bounce play. Let's see if I can click on it. So I had this drop from 1 penny as low as 90 sub penny level, which is like a 10% drop, and I'm already out of the trade. It looks like it might do a follow-up panic, which would be kind of cool, just to get an idea. Maybe there's gonna be support at 87. Of course, it's not an exact science, but it could try to hold 87. But I see a lot of red. That's a lot of size. Maybe it's best to wait for a big volume candle, or maybe not even trade it, because there was an issue with Charles Schwab. So I placed an order when it was 9:32 right here, because it looked like it was trying to hold this level. It was a level 2 reversal, and it seems like the order was not going through. I actually did get executed at 91, and then because I didn't know if I was getting in the order or not, if there was just something wrong, I canceled that order, and then I placed another one again at 9:33. Before it started the uptrend, I had my limit at 92, and it just seems like it wasn't doing anything. I didn't know if it went through or not, if it was stuck, if there was a problem or something like that. So once it started the uptrend at 9:34, I thought, all right, well, let's just throw in my panic sell, just because sometimes sometimes Charles Schwab doesn't tell you immediately if you're in the trade or not. I've had that happen before. So if you just press Control F1, which is what I have for like a quick liquidate positions button, it will wake up and tell you if you're in a trade, and very slowly but surely it told me that I was in the trade, and then it started selling, and I tried to cancel the sell order, but it went through anyway, and I don't mind it too much because it was at VWAP. It did touch VWAP here at 94. It did get to 94 and a half maybe, but yeah, it was a buy here at 91, a buy here at 92. 50,000 shares, total 100,000 shares. So I'm gonna guess maybe 100,000 shares at 91 and a half. Let's see how much that was. Right, 100,000 shares at 9.1. I guess it won't let me type that far, but that was a $900 position. This thing still hasn't updated, but I don't think I made that much. If it's a sub penny, maybe I bought at 91 and a half right here, and maybe I bought at 92 and a half, and then I sold at 93 flat. So, or maybe 92 and a half here, and it just rounds up. So I'll find out the exact numbers later, but yeah, it did do a follow-up panic. I don't know if I would have really traded this. I guess I'll have to rewatch it, but it's not as clean as the initial one. ISWH did have a panic, but I didn't like it because it was a gap down, but it did turn around eventually. This one offered a nice move too. ILUS. It's like these things don't give a crap about the overall market, and the overall market, it is trying to regain itself. It's down now only 1.26%, so that's something to take into consideration. ILUS could be a dip towards VWAP, but those are always sketchy. CYBL is doing a really nice uptrend, as well as this one. This is like a stocks to trade breaking news. This thing is up on NFT news. Nice percent gain for sure. Maybe I'll consider that one, out of all of them, maybe for a dip towards VWAP, but they can be kind of sketchy. So that's what I have for right now. Alright, it is 10:17, 10:18 now, and I don't know what the issue is with E-Trade, but in theory, I mean, I don't know. It says insufficient funds. I guess the $2,000 that I sent to E-Trade, I guess hasn't cleared, and I can't trade it immediately. I'm gonna guess that that's the case, but I tried to short CEI and I wasn't able to. This was just a practice, just to see if it will get through or not. I should probably have this by time. And then I tried, here, 300 shares, and then I tried 200 shares. So, right, it clearly isn't something I can short right now because I don't know. I guess the money hasn't went through, but in theory, I would be short at 166, and I would probably have green the red. So I would have 170 as a place where I would cut losses if it would go green on the day. And I like it because it has this top here at 6A pre-market, and then it has this big old panic, right? Scares a lot of people, and then it kind of tries to regain itself, and it tried at 169, held this level, it tried again, and then it started to gradually fade. So that's when I was interested in it in 10:15. So back here 10:15, I was interested in it, shorting it at 166 in theory. Now, is it going to continue to look nice and be a nice gravy train? Perhaps, but in theory I'd be up a little. I wouldn't be just randomly covering here, although it is probably a level of support, this 164 level. Very big, like level 2 price action where there's just a lot of people on each side and it's like a tug of war. I would again just cut and get out of the trade if it were to go green on the day, which would be 170. Small risk level. I mean, maybe I'm risking $9 max. I'll make an update to see what this one does. Yeah, that kind of sucks. I can't get in this trade. Even if it goes, green on the day and I'd have to cut losses, it would have just been nice if I could have been in this trade. But that's totally fine. I did trade something else, and this one kind of wrecked me. This was it, BONZ. It looks like now it's at 22.38, and my trade was basically, the idea is that it was holding VWAP and it can try to make another move, but it is a sketchy stock because it's up a lot. It was up even more previously, and on top of that, it trades with like it's a very low float stock. It has it doesn't really have a spread, but it just moves in price a lot. So I got in at 268, 954 right here when it looks like it was trying to make an uptrend, trying to hold VWAP. It was a gradual fade towards VWAP. This was like the first dip towards VWAP setup, but it wasn't really perfect because again, it was nice and gradual. It wasn't really that quick. So I get in at 268, and the next candle, it got as high as 28 cents. That's how much volatility this thing started to trade. And then at 9:55, when it was starting to look ugly, right here, I did try to place an order at the very end of that minute at 271. I didn't get out. So at 271, I didn't get executed, and I ultimately sold at 253 at 9:56, which was right here, the one with the wick. 253 is right here. I didn't get the ultimate bottom. It did get even lower to 24. It did hold higher than this wick right here, and it did get as high as 28.9. So I was on the right track, but I'm not gonna play around, especially with something like this. I could just fade very, very, very aggressively, like it did here. It dropped from 26 cents to 21. That's a lot to want to play with. So I unfortunately got wrecked there, so I'm right on the day so far, but I'll keep looking. Alright, I'm back, 10:34. I looked around, it looks like I can short just a tiny 100 shares with this because the funds have not gone over. I might not do it, but if it has like a rebound, maybe this is the most I can do right here, but it might not be bad to still consider a short. it's getting close to where I would have been short at 166, right? And interest is just 7 pennies to short this thing at E-Trade, so that's nothing. That's the idea there. Now, I do have a fear that this thing could turn out to be an inverse head and shoulder. So we have a shoulder here, it makes a head, right, and it has this uptrend. I take a short, it dips a little, you know, maybe it doesn't dip below 165, it makes a shoulder. That can break, and that can be you know, something that is red to green, and it continues some kind of a run. So how strong could that run be? I don't know, but that's something I could take into consideration. ISWH, this one's impressive. It's at 272. This could be a dip towards VWAP setup at some point if it were to happen. And that one's nice. TGGI, this is best case scenario for a morning panic bounce play. Set up something that doesn't just go red and touches VWAP, but naturally gets past VWAP, and on top of getting past VWAP, it goes super green on the day. So this is like a 30% move from this 90 level. It did dip towards 87, and it did hold that support level. You can see now it's a wick, right, and it did hold that level, so that was nice, but I wasn't really too interested in it, especially with the overall market's not looking that nice. It could have continued, but you know, I could have tried it. Perhaps it did hold 87. I was just going for VWAP, the VWAP line right here, and yeah, I still don't know what my average was. I guess I can try right now and see what it was, right? I mean, were they all at different prices? Yeah, they clearly were. I'm not sure how I'll do this. I guess we'll just try 452 plus 184. Right, and then we're gonna divide that by 100,000. Yeah, so my average was 91.25, so that wasn't really actually was kind of good. That could have been a lot worse because I had some at 91 and some at 92, I believe. And let's see this right here. Let's do what my sell was. Okay. Yeah, that wasn't the best sell price, and that's fine. Yeah, my sell price was 91.5, right? So let's go back here. Yeah, so it wasn't a sell at 92. It would have been, okay, maybe I did something wrong with the math, because it says I sold at 93, but that's clearly not what it shows when I do this, right? According to this, I was in at, you know, 91.25, and I sold at 91.5, which would average a 92, but it says 93. So maybe some did get to 93, but the majority of it was not. The majority of it was this 92 level, perhaps, and it averaged out to 91.5, which is fine. I don't regret that at all. Again, this is best case scenario. This is super nice. This is like a Nike check mark. You know, that's best case scenario. ILUS, this thing, I did think that it could do inverse head and shoulder, shoulder head shoulder. It did go from 33 to 35. I was too scared to trade that. CYBL was a dip towards VWAP, but you know, I can't trade this on Schwab, and you know, for me to trade on E-Trade, I would have to, I would lose money because commissions are $6.95 in and out. And if the $2,000 isn't there yet, I'd have to trade like a tiny $200 position. It would just be a losing trade. I wouldn't even trade that, because then I would just hurt my ego, honestly. To make like a profit in terms of what the prices were, but lose because of commission. So I wouldn't have done that, and I'm glad, you know, BONZ did move. Maybe I shouldn't have traded this because it was a gradual dip towards VWAP. If you consider CYBL in comparison, you see, I guess this one was gradual too, but The problem is that BONZ just trades with a lot of range because it's a low float stock. But yeah, that's really where I'm at right now. I might consider a short with CEI, but again, this could be an inverse head and shoulder, shoulder, head, shoulder. I'm just gonna sit back and watch and see what this thing does. I'm not in a hurry to trade and, you know, make back my freaking $3 that I'm down on the trade. I mean, I don't mind being down like $3. Come on. I learned a great lesson with BONZ, and I did trade a small size there. I didn't trade a $900 position there. That would have sucked. I wouldn't have done that, you know, in the first place. But yeah, so it's just gonna be a watch. Even if I don't trade anything, I think it's nice to watch things like CEI just to learn from it. Even if it's watching paint dry to some people, I find it interesting. So I'll make an update later. Alright, it is 10:51. I'm pretty salty because I see what could be an inverse head and shoulder, shoulder, head, shoulder. For the sake of my ego, I hope it fails and it breaks 293 and it does a horrible job. It is kind of overextended with CYBL. I mean, this is a pretty nice move, 35%. So it could be that maybe it's just run up a bunch, so the chances that it does it are kind of low, or at least lower than usual, but that's still there. BONZ is down at 21. I'm not interested in this anymore, but I will save it and put it on another watch list. IOUS kind of broke out of this level here, or officially broke out of here. This one had 2 dips at the previous breakout level. I don't know, I just don't get along with this stock very nicely, but this is a pretty cool move. A little overextended, a little scary, but that's the case with that. TGGI, it is continuing an uptrend and it is putting up higher lows, which is nice, but I'm not extremely interested in trading it at this price level. ISWH continues, although it's starting to look like it's not trading with that much volume. I mean, it never really trades with a lot of volume. And CEI is doing that inverse head and shoulders that I was worried about. Now, did that mean I was going to buy it? No, because I know this thing has like a lot of dilution. It's not necessarily, you know, like in its first or second green day. It's way at its highs. Now, I'm not saying it's not going to do it, but it could obviously, you know, do something scary. Looks like it is having a downtrend, but again, you can say this is a shoulder head shoulder or shoulder head shoulder perhaps, but now I'll be worried if this thing puts up another higher low, so like a inverse head and shoulders second higher low kind of move. If that maybe hits, you know, red to green and it doesn't break, maybe that could be a short opportunity if it puts up a lower high, but because of that I have stayed away from it, and I don't mind if it means I miss a trade setup. You know, it's just trading according to my risk. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I'll keep looking at CEI. There isn't really anything I'd want to trade anymore. Maybe ISWH if it does a dip towards VWAP, something very nice. That's really all I have, and of course the inverse head and shoulders with this one that I can't trade. I'll make an update later to see what these things do. They look very nice. I don't mind that I'm down $3 tiny. Probably shouldn't have traded perhaps BONZ because it does move with a lot of range, but at least I was on the right track, especially with TGGI. Alright, it is 11:28 and I haven't seen this in a really long time. A nice purple thing right here. Now this thing could totally not work out and I'll cut losses. If it breaks, it goes green on the day, but I am short now since 11:20 at 164. It did take a while for the order to get through. I think I was in officially at 11:22. And why was I in it? Because it was kind of looking like this. I've said it was smaller. The 164 guys on the bid was being taken out. I got executed actually while 164 was like this on the ask. Now it does look like a head and shoulders here, shoulder, head, shoulder. And if I were to go back to the other screen, it is looking like it's going to choke perhaps under the trend line. But of course none of this has to happen. Let's see if I can do it. Yep. It is trying to hold the trend line, but it could definitely choke under it. Again, I'd say this is like 50-50 on whether it's going to do it or not, but if it actually, fails, this thing could be super impressive. It can make a really nice move. And yeah, it's just going to be a continued wash. It's nice to be in this trade even if I have to cut losses quickly. Although I feel like there's a good chance this thing can downtrend just looking at where it's at. The dilution, the fact that it put up this attempt here and it's failing. Technically higher lows, sure, but we also get lower highs, and it is trying to hold the trend line. But if it breaks that, if it hits 162, that would be kind of impressive. We do have a wall of people on the ask, but we do have support as well. So it's just going to be a nice slow action. This is the way this one trades, tug of war. I'll be watching this, and I'll continue to see what this thing can do. It could be a nice setup. It could be a nice profit. It could be a loss as well. I don't mind. It also helps me, get in these type of trades that take a while to play out, and I have to learn patience. I'm kind of watching like some very old Apple presentations on YouTube on the other screen, but yeah, that's where I'm at right now. This thing could go either direction, honestly, but it could downtrend. It could also continue the uptrend because it is a bit of a very jumpy stock in terms of it being very hard-headed, but I have a clear risk level, and I'm going to stick by that level. Alright, it is 11:49 a.m. and I just closed the trade because it held VWAP. At least for now, it can continue to struggle here and fail, ultimately break VWAP and do something pretty nice. Now this thing can be like a gradual fade for the rest of the day, and that might take hours. So I just went ahead and I got out again because it held VWAP right here. I made a whopping $2.98, so I'm down today just 2 pennies. I'm down 2 pennies today. Maybe if I would have gotten 160, I would have been up $1 today, and I would have been officially a green day. But again, I only shorted 100 shares. I was going for something larger, right? I was going for my initial one was 300 shares, and then I went to 200. Yeah, I would have been interested in being short again 300 shares, but I was not able to do that because the $2,000 hasn't completely transferred. Let me get some water. Yeah, so that's the case. This thing could definitely hold VWAP, or it could actually, fail. It's going to have potentially resistance, but, for me to still be holding this for several hours, I don't know if I'm really interested in doing something like that. This is probably the longest I've ever held a trade in I don't know how long, but, at least for what is considered to be a day trade. So, yeah, that was my cover there at 161. Again, my short went through at 11:22, if I remember correctly, which was back here, right when it was breaking below. Man, my voice is still choking, jeez, but I guess that's how freaking anxious I was. But that was a nice move. That was a good experience. I'll make an update to see what this thing does ultimately. Again, it could totally choke and continue a downtrend, but I'm happy with my little baby trade there. I would have been happy if I traded a larger size. I would have been up $9 instead of $3. But I think this was again a great trade. Even if this thing gets to 138, again, I still have a long way to go, but yeah, that's the trade there. I guess I'll go over everything else. I haven't been looking too much. TGGI, this thing can continue and maybe do a breakout later in the afternoon and do something crazy. It can totally do that, especially because it's not touching VWAP. It's one of those kinds of stocks that doesn't touch VWAP and then it makes a nice move. A lot of them that do touch VWAP, they do not end up looking so strong at the end. This is super nice with ISWH. Yeah, ideally maybe now a better version of me would probably be in that $2 breakout, because I actually did have an alert on Friday. It just didn't go through on StarSedz. It didn't go through. I don't know if because StarSedz crashed when it was freaking happening or something like that, but I actually did have an alert when this thing was breaking $2. Would I have still be holding this? Probably not, but that's impressive. CYBL. It did do the inverse head and shoulders, but just a little. I mean, 294 best case scenario to 305, just a penny. This is more impressive, this gradual uptrend it's trying to do. It almost reminds me of a cup and handle. IOUS keeps going. Zero interest in trading this one. 100% interest in a morning panic bounce play tomorrow or whenever it tries to do something like that, if it does. Nothing here with BONZ. I forgot to put it on the other watch list and remove it here. I'll make an update to see what this thing can do. It could totally hold VWAP here and continue some kind of an uptrend, and I did not want to be a part of that. Although this thing could very well hit a level of resistance like maybe 165 and reject, you know, and just head back down and maybe break it officially in the afternoon. That's all I have for right now. I'll make an update probably later in the afternoon, or maybe if the market closes, if I don't trade anything. But yeah, that's where I'm at for right now. Alright, it is 6:09 p.m. and I'm here to call it off. I had a total of 3 trades, and unfortunately I finished down like like 2 pennies or something small like that because of BONZ, which ended up being just a very volatile stock. And at least, you know, I didn't freaking bag hold it. Imagine still holding a position like this and now at 13 when I had it in the 20s. You know, it did make a perk up. It did come back, but I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have traded something like that, or maybe I should have, you know, I don't know. I really don't know, because it did have a downtrend. It could have went, you know, it could have done something like this right here ultimately, or right here. It didn't have to come back the way it did and, you know, make some you know, progress. But yeah, that really stinks. I guess maybe I should just stay away from these, because it wasn't like a sharp dip towards VWAP. This thing was gradual, so that might have been my bad, just trading that for that reason. And that's fine. I think I learned a lot from it. My other trade was TGGI, and this one really worked nicely. I was in it at 91 something. Although it did have that downtrend and it would have went a lot lower, at least it did hold that level. And maybe I would have maybe considered that dip when it did that at what was it, yeah, the dip right here was at 87. It did come back, and this is like, you know, best case scenario, and not just hits VWAP, and it not just goes a little past it, but it goes green on the day massively and continues an uptrend. That's really nice, really impressive. Pretty happy with my trade there, and I just want to see what, yeah, it was a small percent gain. I probably didn't get the best pricing, but you know, it was a good trade attempt if you ask me. Even with that delay that kind of, you know, made things a little more sketchy with Charles Schwab, and that it took a while for it to recognize if I was in the trade or not. And then the last one, CEI, this one actually did super nicely. Now let me put extended hours. It is now back at 158, but it did, like, it even got back to this panic here that it had in the morning, right? Yeah, right at the market open. I was short, I think, 1122 right here, 1122, right when it did that transition from, you know, the 65 and 64 range, from 64 to 63, and I held right. It doesn't seem like much anymore, and maybe if I had my full size, if I traded the original 300 shares that I was going for, maybe I would have actually have held this thing longer and taken it a lot more seriously. But you know, in theory, this is the kind of setup I can trade with a lot of size, because this thing is a listed stock. It trades with a lot of dollar volume, and yeah, I covered right here. It did go as high as 163 from that 160 level, but it did continue to put up lower ranges, and then it did like a failed, you know, attempt to get above VWAP right here, which is really nice to see. When it breaks VWAP, it comes back, fails. That's like a confirmation, and I did leave it to do some more downtrending. It got as low as 141. So even with my tiny 100 shares, if I were to have traded it like just best case scenario, which I don't think this is best case scenario, I would have maybe have, I don't know. I mean, it's the first red day, but this thing could easily try to come back and squeeze a bunch of shorts and do something crazy like that. And not necessarily, you know, this is not something I like trading too much, because listed stocks trade after hours, pre-market. I don't want to wake up, you know, I don't want to be at the freaking you know, I don't want to be watching this thing at 7 a.m. So yeah, it did a nice move here. The low 141, even with 100 tiny shares, you know, that would have been 23 bucks. Yeah, like 23 bucks. Would have liked it if I traded 300 shares, and maybe I would have held better. But in theory, when would I have potentially have covered? It's hard to tell because it's just hindsight. Probably in this turnaround right here, because, you know, it's putting up, you know, here's a double bottom, right? Here's a lower low, lower low. Then it kind of did a lower low, but then it held, and then it was a lower high. Constant lower lows. Maybe a little sketchy here because it did like a double top if you don't count the wick. This might have scared me out because it kind of looks like, yeah, it kind of looks like an inverse head and shoulders potential. I might have been out in the 150s, you know, like 150 flats. But if I held through that, yeah, I might have covered here, especially because that's the low right here if you count the wick, you know, 147. I might have considered a cover here, again, because it did like a double top, and then potential inverse head and shoulders more than anything. And we do have that level here that was support until it broke that. Yeah, and then this thing, when it just started having this uptrend, you know, I could probably draw a trend line, and it likely would have broken it here. So if I continue to hold through, maybe I would have been out in the 150s anyway. Again, it was just, you know, a small position. I don't know how long it'll take for the funds to clear, but eventually, you know, I'll be able to trade stocks that are not tradable with Schwab OTC runners. And I can also just consider the fact that I can short here, although E-Trade has like this rule that you can't short stocks under $1. So that would really be against most of my short ideas because I focus on OTCs more. ISWH is a nice runner. I really didn't want to touch it, you know, later in the day as it just continued to run. No way would I have just randomly bought this thing trying to go for a trend line. TGGI, you know, it's nice for what it was. I do like this here that it kind of dipped, had this panic right at that open price. It held green, or at least in terms of from where it opened. Yeah, it was the open right there at 1 penny. It did hold that. That was nice. Maybe I could have traded something like that if I saw it, but you know, that was midday. And I did see the panic here with ILUS. Let's get rid of extended hours. It was kind of hard to look at, but in theory it did like make a range here at 34, but I was too scared, I'll be honest. It did make a nice move to 37, and it went for like a VWAP. I did see this inverse head and shoulders. I just don't like the stock ILUS. We're just not on the same team. This thing ideally can be a morning panic balance play, but yeah, this just, I don't know. This just a stock I don't like. I just don't like it. And it did do that inverse head and shoulders. I didn't think it would move that much because it had resistance here, resistance, and more resistance, but it actually went for a breakout. I don't know when I would have sold, but I was considering it here, but I never took it, and it did work out, so that's nice. Yeah, that would have helped me be green on the day. And the last one, CYBL, yeah, literally had no opportunity to trade this one because, you know, it's an OTC, so if I tried on E-Trade, I would have to pay commissions, and with just like whatever $200 are in this account, that's already in this account, I wouldn't have been able to trade it, and I can't trade this on Schwab. It did do the inverse head and shoulders, barely. What was much nicer was the breakout over this high right here. That was a move from 31 to 34. I couldn't have traded, I couldn't trade this one, but yeah, that's all I got. I think a lot of lessons were learned. Sure, I wish I didn't have that burn with BONZ. I probably shouldn't have traded that because it was a gradual dip towards VWAP. It wasn't anything sharp. That's a great lesson. I still had a good experience, shorting CEI in particular, and not a bad setup at all with TGGI. It did a nice run. I likely might have considered cutting losses if it did break that level. And the level here I was risking, I was just going for VWAP. This one did a lot more than that. Maybe I should have considered it again. I was recording when that was happening, but I think a lot of good things were done. Sure, things I missed, but there were also a lot of good things that I tried, and I think that's the best part of it. I learned a great amount. I think that was worth 2 pennies. That's all I got.